Josh, we had a conversation at Big 12 Media Day about like potential question marks with this Utah team. Some question marks. How about the tight end position? Oh my gosh. How about the answers that Utah's provided there? But there's other positions that even throughout the year, right, you're going to have more questions pop up. One of those being defensive tackle. I think the Utah defensive tackles have done their job pretty well overall. Jonah Lae has been able to step up. Vaimahi Vakalaki. But the problem is Vaimahi Vakalaki have both been battling injuries so far this season. And we'll wait and see what their availability is moving forward. But Josh, that is a concerning position for me when you rely so heavily on your defensive tackles to be able to stop the run, eat up those double teams, and free up what I think are some really nice linebackers this year. Landon Barton, Jonathan Hall, even some other guys have stepped up and been able to produce for this Utah team. If Utah does lose some of those defensive tackles and they have to lean so heavily on freshmen, that is a potential concern I have.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's a major concern in my opinion. I mean, I think what Utah's already done is they've been able to handle that pretty well. Yes, you've had some players come in and out, right? Dallas Vakalahi's kind of been out almost all the season. Got injured in the UCLA game, came back the last little bit and has done well, but got injured again in the West Virginia game. Aliki Vamahi's always been battling injury his entire time here at Utah. But I think you have guys in that room that are stepping up. Now, is it perfect? No, right? Like, and I think that's where Utah's going to continue to grow. But I don't know that you've seen like a major drop off when any of these players go out, at least in that position, right?
Yeah.
There's things that you have to work on, right? That their job impacts a lot of what is going on behind them. And so if there's missed tackles or there's missed things that going on, some of that is going to be on that line to be able to make sure that they don't have to be in that position. And so, I think you're still going to see a defensive tackle room that's going to be working. They're going to be doing really well. But at the same time, I don't know that this is a position group that I'm more worried about. I think, in my opinion, the safety position group is probably where I'd focus the most. You've already lost Rabbit Evans for the season. That he hadn't really played at all this year except for 6 snaps. And then you just lost Nate Ritchie, who I'm assuming is going to be a season-ending injury just based on what I saw on the field. We haven't gotten that official from Kyle Whittingham, but you've got 2 starting caliber safeties that are essentially out, and now you're left with Te'o Johnson, who has been solid mostly. There's still some things that he needs to clean up, and I think it's mostly because he's been put in a lot of different positions that he's not necessarily playing his natural spot. But you've got him who's still a vet that can get in there. And now Utah's going to be relying a ton on Nate Tillman, a freshman coming in. This is a guy that you can clearly see he's got the prototypical body for a safety. It's just a matter of being able to get him reps. And I think there's a benefit in the sense that they got to play him essentially the entire game against West Virginia. Going into this Arizona State game, you've got tape now. You've got something to look at and say, hey, here's how you can take this and improve it to this. Whereas before, had Nate Ritchie gotten injured in, let's say, the Arizona State game, then that becomes much more of a concern. So, injuries are definitely, one of those things that are tough. I would say the secondary is banged up the most, and that's where Utah has to be concerned. But anywhere, when you have to start relying more on your depth, it's not necessarily pray and hope that it comes together, but I think it's one of those things where you have to test that depth and see how it works. And right now, at least in defensive tackle, they've been able to do pretty well in being able to sustain what they've been wanting to do there.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm just curious to see if that will hold up against. And I don't think the offensive lines in the Big 12, Utah is the best one. I'd go Tech probably second best right now, I'd say. But we'll see. Arizona State, obviously the BYU game will be a physical test too. How do those freshman defensive tackles against some of the best ones, how are they able to hold up if Utah needs to use them a lot? But Josh, I was going to go to the safeties next because you're absolutely right. That is a massive thing. I mean, I was so high on Rabbit Evans coming in this year. I thought he was going to have a special year, and I'm glad he has another year to come back because I do think he's capable of having just a monster season. But with Jackson Benny being one of the other most pleasant surprises, and then he gets hurt in the last game. And that's another one where like, hey, let's wait and see what the severity of his injury will be. But that's a lot on a freshman safety at Tillman. You are absolutely right. And Utah asked a lot of their corners too, Josh. And that'll be something I'm also interested to see. They held up well against Morton and Tech. Let's not forget, if it wasn't for that big play on the very first drive, which was, a borderline, hey, was that a pick play blocking downfield? If it wasn't for that, maybe that's even a 3-3 game early on too. Although at the same time, Dylan Curtis got an extra chance because the guy ran into him. So we could do the if-ands game all day. But this Utah team, the defense has stepped up, but they ask a lot of their secondary. I am curious to see how the cornerbacks, especially with how much, Utah just sends the farm after people. I mean, zero blitz like crazy. So it's just those guys on an island out there. I'm curious to see if they can continue to hold up. I feel like this unit is good. Honestly, coming into the year, I said there'd be a slight drop off. I could still see that being the case, although John Henry Daly is making me reconsider that with what a tear he's been off the edge. But do you expect this defense to at all maybe take a step back from the point they've been, or do you think they'll be able to maintain what's been a really strong start?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be okay. I mean, I think there's still some key tests that they have to face, namely being Arizona State, where you've got Sam Levitt, who is a true dual threat quarterback who obviously runs the ball a ton, but he's more than capable as a passer. They also have Jordan Tyson, who is really solid, and if you don't defend him the right way, you're toast. So, I think that's going to be another test that we're going to see. But Morgan Scalley continually gets the best out of his defense the longer the season goes on. And I don't feel that Utah's necessarily started at a bad point, right? Is it to the levels of a 2019 type defense, or maybe even some of that's a little bit more recent? No, not at least starting out. But I think given where they're at and kind of the players in their different positions and maybe the depth that they're in, this is a team that remains solid, right? They're still going to be one of the best defenses in the Big 12. They still rank really highly in the entire in the country. This is a team that continues to grow under Morgan Scalley because the more tape that they get in there, the more that they can press these guys. But in that secondary room, you mentioned it. This is where the test is really going to come. But I think with that, Jackson Benny most likely is going to play. I believe his injury is of the such that he's going to be fine. But then you're going to have Smith Snowden kind of utilized a lot more. Maybe his experiment on the offensive side of the ball shortens or is completely gone because they need him more in star coverage, that kind of stuff. But I think, you've got a team that for the most part has remained well in coverage. Outside of those last 10 minutes of the game against Texas Tech, Utah did its part, right? The entire third quarter was a punt from both teams. Like this wasn't one of those things where it was just Utah was getting burned by their receivers at every moment, right? There's still things that they have to do. They have to have better eyes. They have to be able to be good in coverage, and whether it's a design situation where they just get their hands up on the as they're defending a guy or turning their body to see the ball, they've got to get better at those. But for the most part, up until this point in the season, they've been great in coverage, right?
True.
The biggest issue for this Utah team has just simply been tackling.
Yeah.
If they can get in there, if they can be in the right position and wrap up, I think this team is going to be okay. If they can get in there and they have less than 10 missed tackles a game, I don't think many people are going to be questioning this defense because I think they continue to step up. There's things that need to be improved, but every team has that. And I still think Utah's at a higher level than most teams even hitting at its peak.
It's just crazy to talk about a Morgan Scalley, Kyle Whittingham defense having tackling issues. But they were, Josh, what were you thinking in the press box watching that 3rd and long, the first Tech drive, and seeing all those missed tackles? What were you thinking?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
There's been years where this has happened for them before, and that year that they went down to Florida, that was really essentially why they lost that game. It's because Anthony Richardson just put them on skates, right? And it wasn't just him, it was other guys as well. But I think, you don't know what you have, and you don't know how well you have to do some of these things until you get it on tape. And so the more you get this on tape, now it's easier for Scalley and Whittingham to be able to say, hey, this is where you have to go. If you're in this position, you're toast. If you're here, you have much better leverage, whatever that may be, right? And I think you're seeing incremental steps. I'm really fascinated to see how this bye week and then the week leading up to Arizona State work out for the defense and the offense. But I think if you can get a lot of that stuff kind of corrected, what does Utah do in the second half of the schedule? Are they going to be solid? Are they going to have their problems? I tend to lean on they're going to be okay, just simply because they've proven it over the years that whatever you were at the beginning of the season, by the end, they've generally picked it up. That's not to say they're perfect, but they've generally picked it up and they've put it all together.
You're right. And this is a defense that has, even when they have a down tackling performance, you mentioned Florida, overall, they had that. They would fix that throughout the season. And I feel like it is a group that will continue to get there. Tech's athletes are not like the rest of the conference too. So in that regard, you're going to continue to see some lesser skill position. You're still going to see Baylor, Kansas, and Kansas State have some guys. You mentioned Levitt already. So still some tests there, and be interesting to see how this Utah team responds in those tests. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Moving the game forward, that's what Mazda does. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. These are the moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move cultures, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was, how about J.J. Buchanan? Last week against West Virginia, Devin Dampier just threw it up to him, and he goes down and gets it, absolutely mosses the defender on the fade. That was a moment where he came up big, and with Mazda, you can come up big too. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. Just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. You can move and be moved with Mazda. Head over and check out Mazda's inventory today. Move or be moved with Mazda.